It works.
So let me know when you can hear this. Okay, all right. Seems like sound is working. Perfect. It sounded good when you talked into it. Okay, so just like, how do I clip this as well?
There should
Just
be a little clip on there, and then you just like hold up.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Terrible.
No, like normally what I do is with this
You
one.
do that way. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I'll just do that.
Okay. All right. I'll put it in the back pocket. All right. Sound volume is good. Sound check is good. I'm going to assume so. If anyone can't hear it online, just let us know and we'll figure things out. OWASP Top 10. This was a hard one for me because I wasn't sure the level of depth I need to go. So I decided to go a little bit on the higher side, and then some areas I dived a little bit deep. Some things I really enjoy diving a little bit deeper on. So, and this is a really long presentation. I've usually done only like 2 or 3 of OWASPs whenever I deliver things, 2 or 3 of the top 10 vulnerabilities at a time. So I might move a little bit faster, and we'll see how time is in general. We can always stop at a certain point, and then I can pick it up another month as well. Then that time I can also rejig to see if I should go higher level or lower level as well. So agenda, introduction, what is OWASP if you guys aren't familiar, what is the top 10, then we'll go through the OWASP top 10 and then we'll have questions at the end. I've got 2 t-shirts, pay attention, there will be a quiz. It's not that hard. But OWASP has Project WebGoat, it's a vulnerable web application. So this was at some AppSec event that I went to in the past. I didn't give it to the developers at work. I just found them in my closet. So I'm like, I'm bringing it here. Introduction, I'm at JSS in Discord. I'm currently working as an information security architect at a mid-sized software company in Vancouver. So my responsibilities is to secure all the things at the company, but vast majority of my time, about 90% of the time, is on AppSec. Yeah, so I have a development background. I've been a developer for a really, really long time. But I've always had a keen interest in security. So even at previous jobs, I would be always going towards the security side, talking about defense in depth, that sort of stuff with all of my teammates. At my current company, I started running labs at lunch to teach developers more about security. I got recruited into the InfoSec architect role. I've been doing it for a few years. Really, really enjoy it. Having the time of my life. The vast majority of my time is on blue team side, so helping developers write secure code. If they have problems with, if they have new design, we'll go over it, talk about challenges that they may face, work with bug bounty program. All the vulnerabilities come in, we triage and assess the risk and assign. So that's the sort of thing. I'm an app security enthusiast. I just love application security. I love talking to people that are in application security. And a huge blue team advocate. Really starting building blue team culture, teaching people, making sure that everyone understands that it's really important for everyone to be participating in security for us. And I'm a lifelong student of information security. So thank you for putting together DC604. Really happy with it. I'm leveling up myself. Guru, shout out to you for helping me look at my NetSec side a little bit weak. So definitely trying to level up there. So thank you for that. Quote. I want to start off with a quick quote. Our web application can trust the motives of its users and information that they provide, said no one ever. So this is what OWASP is about. It really helps us. I'll just go over to the next slide. What is OWASP? Open Web Application Security Project. It's a nonprofit charity. Essentially, it's a group of individuals that help secure the internet, help secure web applications. Really bright minds. They've come up with a bunch of different projects to really help with that. So we're just going to cover one of those. Is the top 10. Top 10's been around for a really long time. Every 3-ish years they recycle them because everything changed in software. So they're working on 2017 right now. A little bit of controversy with that. We can talk about that after. But it's a really helpful guide. An amazing resource, OWASP. And they put on great conferences. AppSec USA is amazing. What is Top 10? It's an awareness document for web application security. So I'm somewhat involved in the sales process at our company. A lot of clients are really interested in security. We deal with a lot of Fortune 1000. So their security guys get on the phone. We get security questionnaires. Everyone always asks about, do your developers know about the OWASP Top 10? All the time. So it's really important as a provider of software that our developers actually understand it, so we can start checking those boxes off. There are tons of other vulnerability, but the top 10 is the main ones that you should focus on. There are others that can happen, and I mentioned that every 3 years that they recycle. I'm only focusing on the 2013 version. I'm not going to focus on 2017 or earlier ones. Yeah, so the top 10 focuses on the main ones. So there are other stuff like server-side request forgery or even buffer overflows that happen on web applications, but they don't make the list. It's infrequent. So if you're working at a company, you have a vulnerability, what should you do? You don't have to panic, because you have to assess these vulnerabilities. Everyone has vulnerabilities. We have tons of vulnerabilities, but you want to assess them and prioritize them. What we do at my current company is every vulnerability that comes in, we run a CWSS on it, Common Weakness Scoring System. We assess the vulnerability. We know the controls that we have in place, so we know how to rate it. So a client may think that these vulnerabilities are critical or high, but we'll run it through our CWSS calculator, and we'll determine, you know what, it is a low, because we have these 3 controls that are put in place. So if you have a vulnerability, don't worry. Just breathe. You can reduce the risk, transfer risk, or accept the risk. So reduce it, you can find mitigation strategies. You can reduce it from high to a low, putting in some controls. You can transfer it. If you have a component that you've built out, you can change it into some other third party that has stronger security measures, or you can accept it and say, hey, everyone has vulnerabilities. We have other priorities that we should be focusing on. So I wanted to say that before we get into actual vulnerabilities, because you don't necessarily have to fix everything. It may not make good business value to fix everything. So you should focus on the ones that are biggest risks to your business. I should have mentioned, feel free to jump in whenever you have questions. Okay, so we're going to go through the top 10. This is probably the most sexiest web application vulnerability injection. I'm going to stick to just SQL injection. There are tons of different injection attacks, but SQLi is the sexiest. Once you have that, you can exfiltrate data, which is amazing. So it's number 1 because you know what? It still happens. It still happens, and I believe that there are reports that Equifax was hit by SQLi as well. So shit still happens. There's a lot of legacy systems out there. The newer systems, they still can happen with them. I don't know if you guys know what ORMs are, object relation mapping. you can still screw things up. You can still have SQLi in there. You have to be very careful with how you develop. So depending on how you set up your application, you might even be able to get an adversary might be able to get an RCE from a SQLi. So you have to be very, very, very careful. For me, I've only come across it once in my development career, and it was glorious. I was so impressed. This researcher, this web app that we had has been hardened. It's been very hardened, and they were able to find that one place where we missed it. So it was amazing. And from there, the researcher didn't pivot, but I did because I'm allowed to. He didn't cross the tenants. I was able to extract information from just about 100 different tenants, and if I spent a bit more time, I think I would have been able to get a shell on it as well. So SQLis are very, very, very awesome. I'm sure you guys all seen Bobby tables. Yeah, yeah. So we'll dig into it. So you have Robert drop table students, Bobby tables. If you guys are not familiar with SQL injection, this is somewhat how it works. So you get input parameter, and there's no validation happening on the parameter. You'd assume that most people would be putting in the right values. So for this, say user ID 100, but someone that is malicious will try other values. They'll fuzz the value. So they'll put or 1 equal 1 that's the most famous one. Actually, they usually comment out the rest of that, but this is the very basics of what SQLi is. Any questions with respect to that? This is very, very straightforward. Yeah. So you're only expecting one value. An adversary would add more to it. They would just fuzz that. I want to show an example of ORM. This is nhibernate for .NET. So I'm just executing whatever is in the SQL statement. And although this looks good, it is not good. You can definitely SQL inject into that. You can put that 105 space or 1 equal 1 there, and you should be able to, or you would have to put escape with the single quote, but you should still be able to do SQL injection with respect to that. So even if you are using an ORM, still do bad things. So you have to be very, very careful. And it hasn't happened at work, but I've heard stories of it happening. So definitely have to be careful. I think I might have. Oh, let me run this. Perfect. Found this on the interweb. Oh, too bad it's not that clear. So they're going to be doing a SQL injection attack on here. I feel that someone set up this web application, seemed like it was vulnerable. So they're just doing 1 and then colon space 4. I think x equal x, which is still valid. 1 equal 1 is always true. X equals x is always true. And they were able to log in. So how most of these login pages work is you check to see if the username and password match in your database. And you do a select star, and if you get a certain amount of rows, maybe you'll get multiple rows. They usually take the top row. And the lovely thing is usually admins are the top rows. So if you do a 1 equal 1, you may get a min access. I've seen someone do that in the past. They were able to do a 1 equal 1, and they were able to get admin access into the machine. So very awesome. Sorry, I was hoping that would have been a little bit clearer on there. That. So ORMs are great, but be careful how you use them. Defense. There's three main ways of doing it. Prepared statements. So within the ORM here, you can definitely I would put user ID as a parameter value and then actual value. The ORM will take care of the rest. It'll properly set up the SQL statement. Stored procs. Use stored procedures. People tend not to use stored procedures too much these days. They prefer ORM. A lot of different reasons for that. One, you don't want to be tied down to your DB technology. Two, you can scale a lot better if you put everything in your business layer. Lots of difference. You don't want to be tied into your vendor. And another way is just to escape the input. I always suggest parameterizing your inputs. It's so much easier. It's an easy way to do it. Yeah, the other ways you can still make mistakes, and that's the one version of SQLi I saw in my career was because they were escaping all the other ones, and they missed this one. So the researcher was able to find it. And most of application security, it goes back to input validation. Don't trust the content that's coming. Never trust. Don't trust anything. So other things that you can do. I talked about pivoting and getting more information. If you set up your SQL user with the least amount of privilege, they should be able to pivot into other tenants or into other tables. So least privilege is not easy. You have to be very good as a company to do it. But that is another option if you guys can step it up on that side. And I always love auditing and logging. So if you can, the more logging and auditing, and anytime you see some sort of something that doesn't make sense, investigate. Yeah, simple one. Oh, my favorite type of SQL injection attack. I don't know if you guys can see this. So this one is very, very, very difficult to execute. Very difficult. But I removed the URL, but all I care about is this anyway. Sorry, it is so small. So if you decode the URL, the order by clause was vulnerable to SQL injection attack. And order by for most DBs, you can just do 1, 2, 3. You can just have a numeric value for it. So what this individual did is they did a 1 divided by a 1 or a 0. But what they were trying to do is, this was a Postgres DB. They did a select user, and they wanted to see the char length of the user. So they would go char length 1, no. Char length 2, no. Char length 3. They keep on going up, and they figure out it was 8 characters long. So once they do that, they would, so if it wasn't, it'll give you a 0. 1 divided by 0 will throw an error. You get a 500 error. 1 divided by 1, if you get it right, will execute. And it'll be ordered by 1, but since you get a 200, that means it worked. So that means that you were able to get, you know, the char length. Then you iterate, you pivot a little bit on that. The next one that they did is they want to check the first letter in the string. And again, 1 and 0. So they would do a divide and conquer, start from A to Z to L, and then pivot. So they slowly can figure out what the actual information within the database is. And there's ways to exfiltrate. This is very manual initially, but you can definitely write scripts for it. So blind SQLi is my favorite version of SQL injection. It is hard, but it's fantastic. And you
actually, to play one way. Okay.
Yeah.
Where you do not get those.
wait for, yeah.
How quick does this server
exactly. At the end of the day, they are binary in status, but you can do it with HTTP statuses, or you can do it with wait fors, where it took a second or took 2 seconds to execute the query, where it's supposed to only take just one. So good point on that.
Like first character A.
Yeah, you can definitely enumerate. I'm sure you can, but I haven't seen that. But yeah, Mhm. For this particular one, yeah, for this particular example that I saw, that was the yeah. Okay, we're looking for time. All right, both an auth and session management. So this one is harsh as well. HTTP is stateless. So we're just going to go back to very high level. HTTP is a stateless protocol. When you surf Amazon, you have a session. Session is based on the cookie, that sort of stuff. So when you log in, you'll see additional information. You have a cookie on your side. Amazon's storing all the information on their side. So logging in, so authentication and session management, it should be an easy operation. A lot of frameworks built in their a mechanism for it. So .NET is built in right into the framework itself. But people still can screw things up. So there are different ways of screwing it up. Like back in the old day, I've seen people put session IDs right in the URL. Terrible maneuver. And I'll explain a little bit. Yeah, I've seen that so much in the past. If you fixation, you don't rotate your session IDs, that can be very problematic, or they don't time out. I'll dig in a little bit more. Okay, so this is a query string. So what is problematic with that? So if someone is able to, this one is HTTP, if someone's sniffing the traffic, if E was on surfing and I'm sniffing his traffic, I can log in as E and do bad things. So if this was HTTPS, this is still bad because likely you have some sort of logging system at work. So recently you were talking about ELK. So yeah, developers can be logging and logging stuff into ELK. If you see that URL, a developer can go in and be logged in as that particular individual. Or like that's why you shouldn't have it in URLs. Or trust your developers. So maybe there's an adversary. You always think of breach first mentality. Maybe there's an adversary on your network and they're just looking at your ELK logs. So
I just saw exactly that on a pen test last month.
yeah.
It's like, don't do this.
So I gave Guru's example. So I want to show that this is my airplane ticket. Guru was on the email. He's like, you know what? I can log in as Jeevan's session, and he can buy a plane ticket to go see his parents. So timeout is another example. So if a user uses a public computer at the library, they do their things and they walk away without logging out. If I go back to that URL, I'm authenticated as them and I can do bad things. So there's a lot of things that a lot of bad things can happen if you don't take this seriously. So I didn't want to put down all the defenses against it. I'll talk through a few of these, and they have version 1, 2, and 3 of particular items in there. So ASVS is yet another OWASP project, a fantastic one. You can go through there, see where your company lies for certain scenarios. So, but whenever you do talk to developers or talk to individuals at your company, always understand how authentication is performed. Are you relying on well-tested libraries or frameworks, or are they rolling their own? Are you ensuring data in transit is encrypted? We talked about HTTP versus HTTPS. So big problem if it's not encrypted in transit. Do your tokens or session IDs time out? So an example for ASVS for authentication, verify version 1 of it is verifying all pages in your application require authentication. So they all sit behind some sort of authentication mechanism. So that's easy. That's really easy to do. Version 2 of authentication is verifying all passwords are hashed and salted with a work factor. So it makes it really hard to brute force or impossible to rainbow tables it, which is a bit harder. Still doable, but a bit harder. The version 3 of that is verify all authentication attempts, whether they are successful or failures, take about the same amount of time. So that's a little bit more difficult. This is going to prevent side channel attacks. Right. That it? Yeah, that was it for Broken Awe. So ASVS is fantastic. Yeah. I'm trying to think of any of the OWASP ones. I don't know if it is part of any of the OWASP top 10, but that's a really, really good way to mitigate. Maybe it's part of one of the ASVS stuff. Yeah, but again, that's a great way to mitigate or improve your controls around authentication. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, SMS, actual proper Google OTPs, yeah, yeah. So cross-site scripting. This is very, 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 very easy to do with within that web applications. It happens all the time. It is really, really hard to stamp out unless you can throw a lot of money at it, or if you are able to do things well from the ground up. Security first. So XSS is, am I going too fast? Good pace? Okay. XSS is a different type of injection attack. Malicious scripts are injected into the page. I love what Jeff Williams said about this. Jeff Williams, he was the global director of OWASP a long time ago. He runs Contrast Security right now. He was at Aspect Security as well. Very, very huge. As in stature, he's like 6'6" as well in the AppSec field. XSS is breaking out of the data context and entering the code context. That was a beautiful way of putting what XSS is. So there are 3 different types: reflected, DOM, and stored. It is so hard to stamp this out. This has been a thorn in my side for quite some time. I've had some luck, but it is really hard. Yeah, but I'll tell you how. I'll tell you a little bit how Facebook has dealt with it. One thing, the most famous XSS attack. You guys know who Sammy? Sammy, yeah. So yeah, Sammy Kankar. He actually spoke at AppSec 2000. It was fantastic. But he talked about how he just wanted more friends on his MySpace. that's all he just wanted to show off. So for all of those that aren't aware, what he did was he reviewed the MySpace code he realized you can definitely add HTML within MySpace. He realized there were some defenses that they put up, but some that they didn't. So anytime you viewed his profile, it'll inject some code, and it would add you as a friend of Sammy. Anyone that viewed that second person would inject code and add you as a friend of Sammy. So this, within I think 20 hours, he had 1 million friends. Sammy said that when I think he went to sleep, and when he woke up, and he was shitting bricks. I think he actually drove down to MySpace headquarters and let them know this is happening, that sort of stuff. But this was the fastest, they call it a virus, that happened. So that's the most famous XSS attack, worm, yeah. Again, I apologize for the real small, what I just want to show you were the 3 different attacks. So with Reflected, you just put the script elements within the URL. And what it would happen is, on the server side, you would actually inject whatever they didn't do input validation, common theme. They didn't do any input validation. They would just inject that right into the HTML. And then this is great for phishing. You send XS attack, the attackee, the victim, sorry. Victim would have that rendered on their page. So that's a reflected XSS attack. Browsers are getting better at this. A lot of them, they detect it and they remove that. Some of them, you can turn off that functionality. So I like Firefox for that reason. It's easy to turn it off and just run my reflected XSS attacks. I'm sorry? Yep. DOM is very, 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 very similar to the reflected. You're just working with the document object model within JavaScript. So again, you pass in information, and you're just modifying the DOM itself. You're not. It isn't much different from reflected. Yeah, DOM is mostly done on the client side, so it's possible that nothing gets sent to the database.
They had one. But it all.
Nice. Stored can be really, really bad. Reflected, you still have to send a URL to a victim. Stored, if you surf to the site, like if I were to do a stored on a website, anyone can surf to it, they would be victims to it. So very, very, it is much worse. So what I would do is I would, again, no input validation. I would submit the attack to get stored in the database, and that script would be presented, or HTML elements would be presented to the victim. So this one can be very, very, very bad. Defense. This is what I always talk to developers about. Validate your inputs. If you don't need, this one's a hard one, because you would have your product management team saying, hey, our clients need HTML. You would try to have the fight saying, no, markup is bad. Let's use Markdown. It is so much easier to deal with. But you may potentially lose that battle with your product management team. So you have to work with developers to work on defenses. So validate your input. If you don't need JavaScript in your input, strip it all out. There are lots of tools out there that will whitelist all the HTML elements that you need. On the flip side, encode your outputs. So I always go back to, you cannot trust any of the values that come in. So a lot of times in bigger organizations, you have one team that's getting all the inputs. They're not doing the right thing. And then another team is actually displaying the output. and they're also not doing the right thing by encoding it. So you might be trusting your internal teams, but you shouldn't. You should always make sure that you do the right thing. I talked about markup versus markdown. There are some browser headers that you can set, CSP or XSS protection. There are ways to bypass. There have been bypasses around it, so they've had their challenges there. XHP, content security policy. Thank you. XHP, if you have money, like Facebook does, you can throw money at the problem. So they came up with XHP. They have XML entities that they program with, and they convert that into HTML afterwards. So this is secure by default, and it completely eliminated the problem. Most companies don't have that type of money, so you work with developers to find a way that works for you. And another word of defense is arm your QA folks. Better to arm your developers, but also arm your QA folks that I've used the XSS filter evasion cheat so many times. It is awesome. It is absolutely awesome. So it's a good way to run through some of those tests to see if the application that you're working is vulnerable. Right. For fun, review beef. So I'll let you guys do that. He knows what I'm talking about. Yeah. So that's exercise take-home work. It's really fun, and that's why stored XSS is really scary. So you can use tools like beef to do bad things. Oh shit! I had a demo for this one too, didn't I? Right. That one is. Oh, I'm gonna let it play for the whole time. I think it takes too much time at the beginning to go. You found a vulnerable, whoever it is, found a vulnerable website. Still surfing. You could have cut out like 20 seconds from this YouTube clip. Okay, there we go. So the text is vulnerable to XSS attack. So he's just putting in some HTML tags. Perfect. Now you post it back, and there's and you'll see what it does. And you can do a lot worse things. So Marquis just making it scroll past. So yeah, they did not validate their inputs. So definitely got to validate your inputs. You don't need, for a search, you likely don't need HTML. You probably just want to search the content HTMLI. So you don't need to have those tags, strip them all out. All right, IDOR, another one. So this is to do with, it's a really easy one to understand. It has to do with access controls. So you, as a individual, you're enumerating to try to get access to things that you shouldn't have access to. So this particular one, so you have a URL where account is equal to not my account. So account should equal to your account, but you do want to enumerate. You're going to try doing something else. What I've seen in the past is a lot of account equal 1, account equal 2. So people just iterate and look for other information. I can't remember. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. I think you owned like 100,000 accounts or something like that. Yeah. So yeah. And then was the yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
the guys are sure.
Very cheap, but not an effective solution is don't use IDs like ints, GUIDs. Really hard to guess GUIDs. But the proper solution is actually have access control. So I gave an example here. Oh, and roles base. So if so, a couple of things. One is if admins should only be seeing it, make sure only admins see it rather than just all the users. So I gave a couple of roles: owner, admin, and observer. But you should, whenever you do your access controls, base it on action rather than roles. So if someone were to have read permissions, say read object, owner, admin, and observer should be able to have that control. And then write, owner, admin, and delete, just owner. So always base it on action rather than the role itself. And I had another quick clip of iDoors. This one was a little bit more comprehensive. I don't know. Again, I could have ripped off basically. Okay, so this is the profile you have access to. I think it's 1, 2, 3. Yes. I
never
yeah.
unless the admin is
Right.
the permanent rule.
Yeah.
But this is like classic case. Primary.
1, 2, 4 is John Smith. Okay, next few are not as sexy, so forgive me about that. But there are awesome ones as well. Security mix configuration. This one, examples will be better, but it is a challenge to always roll out, do the right thing. So there are always 100 things that you have to pay attention to, and shit happens. I'll show the defense afterwards. So you always have, you see stuff like debugging information enabled. So you see the entire call stack. That's not good when you're surfing the internet. Incorrect folder permissions. So you can see all the files in a directory or a S3 bucket that's not set up correctly. Yeah, S3 buckets. I actually have a chat about that. I think is this one as well. Default account and password. I have a real good story about that one. And maybe half of you guys will know about that. Unpatched security flaws. I think I did the incorrect folder one. That's the one I'm going to talk to. Good. There you go. So the first one is Mongo. By default, Mongo allows users to be allows their DB to be accessible to the internet, and you don't have to authenticate. Terrible.
SFU.
Oh.
Is it SFU or UVic?
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was UVic, yeah.
So what happened is, I think they reported it a few years ago, and then was it this past year or last year? I can't remember. One of these years, some adversary, he noticed it and started taking a look across the internet, and anything that was open and didn't require authentication, encrypt the entire database and leave a message there so that they can give Bitcoin to that particular individual. So okay, I did a shitty thing. Now I have to pay Bitcoin. I pay the Bitcoin ransom. I got the results. I unencrypt it. Someone else had encrypted the whole thing. So it had multiple times because people found out about it. Yeah. Yeah, so people, sometimes you had to pay multiple ransoms because because of the.
They were getting the list of MongoDB.
Yeah, they
So a
were.
lot of
Yeah,
people had access. To
yeah,
it.
yeah.
What a real athlete's body looks Get the spreadsheet.
So Mongo was deservedly shat on because of that. And you know, people always shit on Microsoft for how difficult it is to set up their tooling. But the good thing that they do is a lot of the stuff is security by default. So it is hard to set up, but you are a lot safer for it. Okay. So Guru stole my thunder. Nearly 200 million voter records were exposed. A security researcher noticed that their S3 bucket that was not secured. It was a Republican data firm. A deep root analysis that didn't secure the bucket. There was over 1 terabyte of data. And they claimed that no one had taken that data. So security misconfiguration, very, very, very easy to do. Controls, do you guys know Chef? A lot of you guys know Chef, yeah. Just having something like that where you can program, make sure you set across your entire environment. That's always good. It happens. It always happens. There are snowflakes that you have in your environment, or you missed on things. It's okay. Just put it into Chef. When you discover it, put it into Chef and do the right thing. And just in general, you need a process to deploy all new software in production. Hey, we're using a new DB database type. Well, let's talk about it and see how we can make sure it's secure by default when we do deploy. Need a process for deploying patches. That's always a challenge, but the good thing with the way that the world is going, you're moving to Docker, or even better, serverless architecture. Don't have to worry about servers anymore. So a lot of great stuff that is happening in that front, but a lot of the legacy applications, you still need to patch them up for the OS levels for it. Maybe you set up your architecture in a different way that you have more defense in depth. So definitely a lot of different ways to deal with security misconfiguration. This one's the easy one. Data exposure. So make sure that you are encrypting when you go over the wire at rest. Don't expose data in your repo, please. That happens way too often. So if you're over the wire, do HTTPS. HSTS is a thing. Use it. Make sure that the first time you do a handshake, you can set a time frame. Most people do it 6 months to a year. Every time you use that site again, it's always HTTPS from there on. So do that thing. At rest, DB encryption. I also do make sure that the sensitive information within the database, make sure that's encrypted. So you trust your employees, they're good, but sometimes some of the things you want to make sure is encrypted so they can't even see it. Cookies should be secure, so HTTP only flag will make sure that JavaScript cannot manipulate with the cookie. Make sure you do that. Secure flags will make sure that you always send the cookie over HTTPS, not HTTP. Don't store data in clear text. So two things I always see is secrets. So GitHub has tons of things. Don't please. Have a story about that. Yeah, I do. Have a story about that one. And passwords. Do not store passwords in clear text. Don't even encrypt them. Make sure they're hashed and salted. Oh, good. I had the next one. Passwords hashed and salted. And always use latest standards for securing your data. So don't use DES. There are better standards. No SSL anymore. Please TLS. I don't think anyone uses SSL, but they keep referring to SSL. And depending on your requirements, use hash versus encryption in certain scenarios. So the ones we always talk about is passwords. Make sure you hash your passwords. Add passwords. So LinkedIn got owned with that. They didn't have any salt on their passwords. Very easy use of rainbow tables. GitHub kills me. But a great one, Rich Mogul. Do you guys know who Rich Mogul? He's on the Cloud Security Alliance. Very smart person. He gave this example. He screwed up. As in one of a class that he was teaching, he screwed up. He talked about it. He accidentally published one of a sensitive key to his Git repo. Someone scraped it, noticed it, started running some crypto miner on it, and Amazon alerted him. I think this was at the end of the day. He's like, why am I getting this alert? He's like, well, maybe I'll look in the morning. He decided to look at it, and then he's like, holy shit. So shut it down. I think it cost him $400, but Amazon being Amazon, they refunded the whole thing. Yeah, they were really nice. Yeah. So that I was glad. I think Rich actually put a blog post about it as well. I'm glad that he's a real strong security guy, but he's talking about his faults as well. So it was nice for him to talk about that. Yahoo got owned as well. I think what the word on the street was, they had the same secrets for how they set up their cookies in the staging environment and production. So I think Alexei Bellin was his name. Is that the Canadian? I can't remember if it was the Canadian or it was the Ukrainian or the Russian that breached. One of those four guys that breached Yahoo. They got into Yahoo. They looked at their repository, noticed that there was a secret that was shared from staging to production, and they're able to craft cookies, authentication cookies, so they can get into. So you work so hard to secure that front door, but if you do these things, you open up the sides to be exposed. And shit happens. I've dealt with this many times in my career, but you have to keep fighting the good fight and making sure that you move the secrets into configuration files, and you have separate configuration files for your staging and production deployment. Yeah. Shit happens. Yeah. Shit happens.
Embarrassing.
Yeah. All right. More of this. Did I have for this? It's very similar to IDOR, but like the solution is similar. But the example from OWASP is so imagine that the scenario that both of these require authentication. So if someone were to hit both of those and they're able to hit it and without authentication, that is a problem. So make sure you have your access control set up. In similar situation, a lot of people have something /admin. Make sure that the authentication is set up so that maybe regular users will hit the non-authenticated one and admins hit the authenticated one. So yeah, this one's another unsexy one. Just make sure your access controls are set up correctly. CSRF. Cross-site request forgery, CSRF, usually abbreviated to CSRF. I think Jeremiah Grossman was the first one to discover it, and he discovered it in Gmail. I think that was the story. The guy's brilliant. So a small example of it is I'm authenticated, and then I go to whose account? I'm going to Eric's account. So I went to Eric's website, and this is in an image. So this shitty bank, bank.com, allows for transfers whenever you're authenticated. It's on a GET request in this scenario. So in Eric's, all he did is put it in an image tag. Since I'm authenticated with the bank, it made a call, and it was able to transfer that money. I'm not too sure if I explained that correctly. So that's the CSRF. So you go to a malicious website, you're authenticated with the proper website, and the malicious website is making calls to the proper website on your behalf. You don't know it because you're already authenticated, and you're just assuming the malicious website is doing the right thing. I have a video for it. The
Form vulnerability.
Okay.
So you could like do a form on your.
Yes.
That's supposed to
I
create a
might have
dynamic
used that
object
before. Might have done that before. So this is a person doing it in the proper site, and they will click on a link on the malicious site. Sorry, there. Here, I can turn up the volume. Okay. So they're clicking on that bad link, and that bad link is actually transferring money from the original site from one to another. You're still authenticated against it. You didn't log out from it. It'll show you that the transfer amount has updated when they refresh on the other side. it's a lot of money. So as 15750, if they're refreshing 14750, CSRF is I see a lot of clients testing for it, and it's easy to test for. It's actually really easy to remediate as well. I gave a .NET example. This is more for legacy applications where you do a lot of postbacks, like when you submit the page, you need a token. The hidden input, a token. So if I went to Eric's malicious site, it wouldn't know the token. So if he's trying to submit back to bank.com, he's not going to know the token, and I'm going to reject the request because that token, the non-token, doesn't match up to the one that I have in my session. With respect to a lot of the SPAs, the single page applications, you have cookies, and you have to submit the via headers as well. So you make sure that the cookie and the header match up. So Eric's malicious site does not have access to the bank.com cookie because it's cross-domain. You don't have access to those things, so it's really easy for preventing CSRF. Shit still happens. Like I've seen a lot of pages inherit from other pages, and then there's always snowflakes within your code. So people are always finding more CSRF vulnerabilities. But it's really, really, really easy to remediate. Yeah, exactly. You just need one per session. You don't necessarily need to rotate it often. It's just the fact that third party will not know what the token is. They don't have ways to get access to it. Yeah. Very, very easy to remediate. This one's very annoying. It's really, really hard to deal with as well. So in large organizations, you have a ton of developers. And just like developers do, I'm complaining about it even though I'm a developer. You have a lot of new frameworks, new libraries, new tools that you can play with and include into your application. They include it, but they never update it. So say you're using jQuery, it's a really old example. A lot of older jQuery have XSS vulnerabilities, but their application is working, they don't give a shit. But it's still vulnerable. So it is really hard to defend against it because one, you have to have proper processes put in place. So making sure that you vet third-party libraries, make sure they don't already have vulnerabilities, centralizing it somewhere so that you know to review and find out, making sure that you're on mailing lists and you understand which third-party apps have vulnerabilities so that you can push developers to patch it up. Throwing money at this problem is probably the best way to deal with it. BlackDuck has a perfect solution for it, and it has a solution for more than that. You can also, another problem with this is side, not an OWASP vulnerability, but developers can be using third-party libraries that have bad licenses. So maybe licenses that require you to, that state that you have to make your code public. So BlackDuck software, they do good stuff for that. It's kind of pricey, but it is one good solution. Throw money at this problem. It's a lot easier than dealing with it. Yeah. Last one, and this is the one I hate the most. Unvalidated redirects and forwards. I hate this one. I absolutely hate this one because at the company I am at currently, we don't need it. We don't need it, but people still have it. So this one annoys the hell out of me. I hate paying bounties on this one because just don't do it. So this is fantastic for phishing. Like if you find something vulnerable on td.com, like an unvalidated redirect, you can, when I send you an email address, or sorry, send you an email, td.com/ and then I put my malicious site on it. Click on the link. It looks like it's like the link you clicked on was td.com, and you get redirected to my malicious site. Looks like exactly like the TD website that you log into, and you put in your credentials and your own. So fantastic for phishing purposes. So my favorite defense of it is don't have it on your website. It doesn't make sense. If you are forced to have it on the website, your product management team is bullies. You just tell them, okay, every time we redirect, we're just going to go to this one specific page. And if that doesn't work with them, and then just make sure that the secondary solution is to whitelist where it can go to. So yeah, a couple of defenses. Perfect defenses, just don't do it. No point. All right, defense in general. I have tons of things to talk about defense, but I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Don't trust anyone. So I always tell that to developers. I have the Spoking Man from X-Files. So don't trust your other teams within VC. You can trust that you will do the right thing, but don't trust that other teams are going to be doing the right thing. So input that you get from them, always validate your inputs. And with respect to input, anything can be fuzzed. I've seen user agents being fuzzed. Usernames, I've seen excess attacks from usernames. It was glorious. Don't trust anything. Make sure that you encode the outputs. Sorry, had a question? Oh, okay. This one's hard. Know your assets. Same in the networking side of things. It's a challenge. You can have a shit ton of things. Make sure you have processes around that. Patch frequently. Another hard one. Patch management is difficult. But make sure that you follow common practices. So don't roll your own crypto. Don't roll your own auth mechanisms or session management. It doesn't make sense to do any of that sort of stuff. And then just follow the common practices like least privilege, look at auditability, failing securely or failing close, separation of duties, look at minimizing your attack services. Defense in depth is great. It is a thing. So, and have fun. All right. Final thoughts. Someone was asking pen testing tools. Firefox is fantastic. Use your brain and Firefox. There are other tools, but if you get the basics of fundamentals from that, that's plenty of what you need. I've seen amazing results. I've seen security researchers that really do the manual stuff. They look at all the requests that come in and out. They do amazing things rather than just blasting it with some sort of tool. This was a very, very high level presentation. We can definitely get deeper into specific areas. So if you guys want that in the future, let me know. I just want to make sure that we understand the basics. We're all on the same page. Then we can go deeper. And security isn't sexy. A lot of so a lot of the mundane things can really help protect yourself. So always push on those things. Injection is sexy, I admit that, but security misconfiguration is probably what's going to do you. Okay, questions? All right, quiz. So I will let Hermes judge who yells it out first. So we got 2 t-shirts. They're medium. This one's a medium size. They're both medium size. Webgoat.
See who gets their hand up.
All right. This one's easy. What vulnerability makes Jeevan the angriest? There you go. Okay. What type of SQL injection attack does Jeevan love the most? There you go. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
So it looks like we got 2 more things for giveaway here. There's one more t-shirt. This from
Brought this back.